It's sadly Monday, but the Bluebloods are back to make your Monday a little bit better. We start the episode by discussing the situation brewing in Clemson with Dabo Swinney. And then we continue our hot seat segment. And today we head to the CUSA. And then we start a new segment where we re-rank past recruiting classes and give the new top 5 recruits for each year. And today we're going to go analyze the loaded 2013 class. And of course, we wrap it up with our 2021 recruiting update. And today we head down to Waco, Texas to look at the Baylor Bears. We have a full show today, guys, so let's kick it off. If you've listened or watched any national sports show, you probably know a little bit about the Dabo Swinney situation in Clemson. The first news that broke was that assistant coach Danny Pearman used a racial slur at practice in 2017. Swinney said that Pearman would have been fired immediately if the slur was directed at a player, but stated that Pearman made a mistake by just repeating the phrase a player already has said. Then, to make matters worse, a photo of Dabo Swinney wearing a Football Lives Matter shirt leaked to Twitter and caused an uproar across the country. And this all followed a fallout started by DeAndre Hopkins when he called out the Clemson campus for having multiple buildings with questionable name origins. So as of this weekend, Dabo and the Clemson football team held a march and a peaceful protest around campus. And Dabo has now come out and said that his players and past players have educated him on the struggle of African Americans and that he is embarrassed by his recent comments. So, Brandon, after all that, what is your take on all this? And you know, we kind of want to keep this focused on football. So do you see any after effects of all this stretching to the field or future recruiting?
Oh, yeah, man. And look, I'm not here to talk politics. I understand there's a lot of things brewing in this country right now. I'd like to stay away from that. Like I've mentioned to you in the past, I haven't said this on the show yet, but I feel like our show is kind of like an escape from reality. And while there is so much going on right now, we kind of like to steer clear of it. But this does have to do with football. It really does. And it is bigger than that too. You know, it's not just football, obviously, but I want to focus on what you said when you talked about the repercussions of maybe recruiting or maybe Clemson's public image. And I see that, you know, I see it affected in a very negative way. I don't see Clemson. I don't see them kind of rebounding from this. I think that recruiting probably takes a pretty big hit. You know, if you are on Twitter or on social media at all, you kind of see like a public outcry from players in the NFL, players at Clemson who are just showing they're just showing that they don't agree with what's going on at Clemson. And it's not only the things that are going on, you know, within the program. It's not just, hey, did Dabo do this? Did Dabo do that? Did this coach say this? No, it's not that alone. It's also like, hey, for instance, today, DeAndre Hopkins posted a video or retweeted a video of trucks lined up in Clemson to meet downtown at a protest. It's just a line of cars that are carrying Confederate flags, and DeAndre Hopkins, he's quoted as saying, "Welcome to the real Clemson, South Carolina, the city where I was born and raised. But the good people of Clemson outweigh these Nazis." Now there's a line of cars carrying these flags. And you know, football being the sport it is and being dominated by, I don't want to say a majority of African American athletes, but there are quite a few African American athletes. I just don't want to say that without getting my facts straight first. I see this as like a deterrent. I understand Clemson's good. I understand it looks good for their draft stock in the future playing for Clemson. It really boosts the resume. But being in a town I mean, this video here, it just shows a line of cars that are going to a Black Lives Matter protest with Confederate flags flying openly. I don't know, man. I can't agree with it. And I can't imagine that these recruits that are facing a lot more than I am can agree with it.
Yeah, I agree. And like Brandon said, this story's dominated the headlines, so we don't want to try to lecture you guys on politics. If you want to know how we feel about all this, go check out a few episodes where we set our piece on the situation. The thing I do want to say is that I think this is just another example of a situation. We've talked about it with Micah Leach on the show. You just have to strive to educate yourselves on issues like this in America before you speak out, especially with a platform like Dabo Swinney has. And I really like what Christian Wilkins and some other Clemson players said by saying that Dabo needed to be educated on the struggles of African Americans and that he's not just an evil, bad person. And since having conversations with some of these players, Dabo's greatly changed his tone or stance on this issue. And I mean, the situation with the assistant coach just got really, really out of hand. And I think you got to put it on Dabo, right, Brandon? I mean, if you're going to run the program, when situations like that arise, you have to act swiftly and appropriately, or it gets like this where there's bitter players, there's unresolved tension, and it boils over in times like this.
Right. And it's definitely an issue that's bigger than football. And I think that at times Dabo has been a little bit tone deaf right now. And like I said, I'm not here to talk politics. That's not my forte. I'm not greatly educated as far as politics go. I probably could be more educated. And I probably should take the time to be more educated, but I'm not. And so I'm not going to sit here and harp on that too much. But Dabo is truly, I think he's kind of in the same boat where I'm at, where he might not fully understand everything going on, but unlike me, he's speaking out about it, whether he means to or not. Wearing the Football Life Matters shirt is kind of it's a tone deaf and unflattering look, especially in the light of recent events in this country.
Absolutely. And I want to shift to on the field stuff, like more what we wanted to focus on. And I see a lot of players taking Clemson off their list of schools, and I think this is due to multiple reasons, Brandon. I think some stretch off the field and others are on the field. I mean, Brandon, how big is negative recruiting in today's college football landscape? I mean, if you really don't think schools like LSU, Georgia, Alabama, even Auburn are blowing this up in players' ears, then I think you're dead wrong. I mean, I think schools that compete against Clemson are flipping this on its head and could steal some really good recruits that might have been on their way to Clemson.
Yeah, for sure. And we haven't necessarily seen a lot of decommits from Clemson in light of this, but I still think it's really early. A lot of this stuff is coming out in the past week, 2 weeks. More specifically, I think that the brunt of it's coming out more so in the past week, and so we might end up seeing it. These players have a lot to think about, and their decisions may come soon. They may decide to fight through what's going on, and maybe not decommit, but it's definitely going to hurt the future commits, commits that haven't, signed. Well, no one signed the paperwork yet, but unless you were in the class of 2020, but it's going to affect a lot of those players that haven't committed yet, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, another thing is that families may not want to send their sons to go across the country and play for a school that seems to be buried in controversy right now. I mean, virtual recruiting is not going to work in Clemson's favor right now. Like Zoom meetings and things like that are not how you build real life connections. And with a program like Clemson who recruits nationally, why would I send my kid from California to Clemson, South Carolina if all this is going on? I mean, Brandon, would you feel comfortable after not meeting these coaches in person, after hearing all this stuff, as sending your kid across the country to this program?
No, and I think that, no matter where you stand on this issue, I think that there's a lot of controversy going on in Clemson right now. I think there's a lot of tension, and I wouldn't be comfortable personally sending my theoretical child. I don't have a child, but sending my theoretical child to go play in Clemson right now. I think there's a lot of tension, and I think that it's not a good place to be at the moment.
No, I mean, definitely not. And so we talked, Brandon, how long ago was the Mike Leach situation? Probably a little bit over a month or two. Um,
I think it was in April.
yeah, April, and that's when Mike Leach tweeted a racially insensitive tweet with a noose, and we addressed that on the podcast. And this is where I think it separates like a total program destruction. I think this is why we're not going to see any transfers from Clemson. We might just see an effect on recruiting, and it's because I think players within the program already have such a great relationship with the coaching staff and the community that I don't think anyone's going to really transfer. I mean, when you look at the Mike Leach situation, he had no trust built up in Starkville. He had no goodwill or anything. I mean, so the players didn't really have that bond, so transferring was a way easier decision for them. While Dabo has been at this program for years, and so he has a little bit of goodwill built up, and we've seen so many players stand up for Dabo, current and past, and we didn't see that for Mike Leach because he didn't have any ties with Mississippi State. So I think that's the reason we're going to see Clemson survive this. But I really think this is a learning experience for everyone, guys. And I think the best way to end this segment is just to say that we should all, like we said with Mike Leach, man, think before you speak and make sure we are educated on what we are speaking on. And I think that's the best way to end this segment. So we're going to go ahead, move on to some other segments, more to do about college football. And of course, we're going to start with our hot seat watch that we've been doing for a while now. Go check out our most recent episodes for some more of these. We've ran through the Power Five, most of the Group of Five, but today, guys, we're going to head to the Conference USA or CUSA today. So, Brandon, which head coaches from this conference do you feel are on the hot seat right now?
We're bouncing back, Zach, because I feel like there are a few head coaches on the hot seat here. But first and foremost, I'm going to have to give a hand to Coach Dana Dimel in El Paso at the University of Texas, El Paso, because his overall record there is 2-22. So that's, take that as you will. I think it's pretty bad, but it is better than what UTEP faced in 2017, the year before he showed up, which was 0-12. He's been 1-11 for the past 2 years. It doesn't really seem like things are getting a whole lot better. I'm sort of starting to think that maybe they're going to go 1-11 again. So UTEP, for those that aren't very familiar with Conference USA, haven't always just been this laughing stock. I mean, as a matter of fact, in 2014 they made a bowl game. They went 7-6. That was one of their better seasons in recent memory. They've never been like great, but they've never been this bad, I would say. UTEP at this point is just the laughing stock of the Conference USA, and Conference USA is the laughing stock of the Group of Five. So, I mean, it doesn't get much worse than this head coach, in my opinion. I think you have to turn something around at some point. I mean, there was obviously that one 0-12 season, but before that, I mean, they were at least winning, 4 or 5. I mean, even 7 games at one point. So you got to turn it around, and I don't see him doing it. I think that it's a wrap for him halfway through this season.
It has to be, though, right? I mean, okay, so guys, Dana Dimel is probably on the hottest seat of all time. And he came into UTEP as a popular assistant from Kansas State. And he was known as Bill Snyder's right-hand man and was at K-State through both of their glory years in the late 90s, mid to early 2010s in Manhattan. And, like Brandon said, the 2-22 record through 2 years is terrible. And if you analyze the wins they've had, Brandon, do you know what school they beat in 2019?
I forgot. I feel like I should know this.
Houston Baptist.
Yeah, not great.
By 2 points. They almost lost it.
I don't even know what division Houston Baptist is in.
I don't know.
What is that? Is that like Texas 4A high school?
Maybe. If that. I don't even know if they can get to 4A in Texas. Maybe like 4A Minnesota or something. Texas high school football. Yeah. I mean, because, Minnesota high school football isn't like Texas, dude. Some of these Texas high schools, man, are for real. Houston Baptist better be on the lookout. And, Brandon, their one win in 2018 was Rice by 1 possession.
And Rice is the other laughing stock in the Conference USA. So
That's true. But you know what's the sad part? Why I have Damo on the hot seat is because there's no Houston Baptist to ease the pain in El Paso. Brandon, they replace Houston Baptist with non-conference games against Texas Tech. They have to travel to Nevada, and then they have to travel to Texas.
yeah, no, I mean, I think he's done for. You already convinced me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking at the schedule. An 0-12 season is actually the most likely scenario for this team. And if Damo survives a 2-34 record, I don't know how he gets fired.
Yeah, no, I mean, fair.
I mean, just go play the NCAA football game like on your old Xbox 360. Try to go 2-34. I promise you're not going to make it. Even like, it just makes no sense how you're even 2-34. I don't understand how that even happens.
No, it should never happen. That's actually really bad. Now that I'm actually comprehending, 2-34. Oh my goodness.
That's what he'll be if he goes 0-12, man. That and 2-22 is just as bad. Like, I mean, as just a group of five, Power Five, if you're a D1 program, you should be able to win more than one game.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that is just.
Hope.
I don't know. I guess not. But we'll stop picking on UTEP. I don't think they have a lot to be happy about, so we'll at least let them rest on this podcast. But my next pick, it might be a little bit of a stretch, Brandon, but I can see it happening, and that's Rick Stockstill from Middle Tennessee.
Okay.
And is he on your list?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, we can build off this together. The reason I have him on the list is because I think he just wore out his welcome. I mean, if that makes any sense. So he's been a coach here since 2006, guys. And if the trend starts to be a losing season, then a new direction is going to have to be taken. New, fresh outlooks get recruits on campus. And that leads to rebuilds, new goals, new energy brought into the program. I mean, if he's losing, why would you come play for a coach who's been at the school forever and cannot win? It's the same trap Boston College fell into with Steve, Steve Adazio. And I really think after a 4-8 season last year with losses to Rice and Charlotte, I think that calls to put Coach Rick on the hot seat.
Right. No, I mean, it has to. He does have a winning record overall. It's his first head coaching gig. He's been there for what? I mean, close to 10 seasons. Well, more than 10 seasons now. I mean, he's been at Middle Tennessee forever. But like you said, he's worn out his welcome. 92-86 overall is decent, especially for Middle Tennessee. But I feel like Middle Tennessee at this point shouldn't be going 4-8, right? I mean, that's where they went last season.
No,
I think
that's terrible.
Any losing season there is not good. But I think that especially 2 in a row is gonna. I mean, that's got to give you the boot, right? I don't know. I mean, he's done pretty well. I mean, like I said, 92-86 overall from Middle Tennessee. I'll take it, but you can't give me a losing season. You need to get to a bowl game if you're Middle Tennessee.
That's what I'm saying. Okay, so I'll jump way ahead of my argument. If a 6-win season does not come to fruition this year, I see Middle Tennessee has to move in a younger direction. I mean, this season, I see 6 guaranteed losses for Middle Tennessee. They have to go to Duke. They have Virginia Tech coming to play at Middle Tennessee. I don't know how they worked that deal out. They have to play Western Kentucky, made a bowl game last year. At Marshall, made a bowl game last year. At UConn, and then they play Florida Atlantic, who also won their bowl game last year. Those are the 6 guaranteed losses I see here. And games against Charlotte, North Texas, and Rice aren't going to be easy wins either. So I see 6-6 to 3-9, and I think if you don't hit that 6-6 mark, you just go ahead and hit the reset button on the program.
Yeah, no, I mean for sure. Like I said, a bowl game is basically a necessity for Middle Tennessee, and I think anything short of that loses the job for him.
It should, especially after what almost you're approaching. You're already over 10 years into the job, and you're really approaching 15 or more. And how do you not have this program competing for a bowl game already?
Right. And you're not even, it's not even, I mean, you're kind of close, but 2 wins off isn't that close. I was going to say he's not even close, but I guess he's a little close. I don't see 4 wins as super close to being bowl eligible.
No, that's actually a good bit away. I could see maybe 1, but 2 wins, like you that's on you. I think at that point.
Right. I mean, you had that many chances. But I'm going to go ahead and move away from him. I have one more coach on my hot seat in this conference. And I'm going to have to go with Mike Bloomgren here out of Rice. Rice isn't a team that necessarily wins a lot of football games. I'm not going to call them a good football program. I simply won't. This past season, he went 3-9 there. Before that, it was 2-11. This is his 3rd year. And Rice, like I said, historically hasn't been great, but I don't know. There's something that rubs me wrong about going consistently 2-11, 3-9. I mean, he's 5-20 overall, and this is after Rice. I mean, Rice hasn't always been the laughing stock that they are right now. Right now, I mean, some people would call a 3-win season pretty good for Rice, but in 2013 we saw Rice win 10 football games. In 2014 we saw them win 8 games. And it's just all been downhill since there. They fired their head coach in 2017 after going 1-11, and now they've decided to hang their hat on a guy who's gone 5-20 over the past 2 seasons. Like I said, I'll say it one more time. Rice is not a good football program, but I think that he needs to step it up, and I don't think that another 3-9 season keeps him his job.
And it really shouldn't. I mean, I didn't have him on here. I don't know why. I guess I might have missed that one, but I mean, I like that pick, and I feel like if he does give another 3-9, 2-10 season, he's got to go. I mean, but it's also hard because some of these programs are being rebuilt from the absolute bottom, so you might have to give them a little bit more slack than you would Power 5 coach at a bigger program. But like you said, Rice might not be a great program, but if you're getting neutral site games against LSU, you probably need to do better than 2-10.
Right. I mean, 2-10 is tough. I don't care if you could be Houston Baptist, and if you're going 2-10 or 2-11, then you got to do something else. You got to try out. You got to try out another sport.
I just want to know, how did they get a neutral site game with LSU?
I don't know. I mean, LSU was probably like, "Hey, can we get a discount?" And they're like, "How?" They're like, "Can we?" Or actually, LSU probably paid more to get a neutral site game instead of traveling to Rice. I don't know where I'm going with this. Maybe LSU paid Rice less to not have to come to Tiger Stadium.
That's fair enough. I just had to ask. But, guys, we are going to end this segment here. But we're going to move on to a new segment. We're starting a new one here. And it was all sparked because ESPN power ranked the number 1 recruits in the ESPN era, which starts around 2006. So this kind of got me and Brandon thinking, why not re-rank or reanalyze each recruiting class and give you guys the real top 5 players from each recruiting class since 2013. We picked this year because it seemed to fit, to be honest with you, and we don't have time to analyze every single recruiting class of all time. And we're only going to reanalyze the top 100 recruits and pick the top 5 because it's impossible to go through the composite for 247 goes to 1,000 recruits.
Yeah.
So it would have been outrageous. So we're going to analyze the top 100 and pick the top 5 players from each class based on their performance after high school. This episode, we're starting with a loaded 2013 class And the top two players here were Robert Kimdichie and Jalen Smith, who each had respectable college careers. So, Brandon, we're going to snake this. And we're going to go over.
Oh, wait, are we drafting it?
No. We're just going to go in like snake style order. We're not going to
we can
draft
pick
it.
the same players.
Yeah, we can still pick the same players. We're going to snake it and go in reverse order, Brandon. So, who is your number 5 recruit in this class now?
My number 5 recruit in this class now, that's tough. I had my first picked up, or my first pulled up. My number 5 is going to be Alvin Kamara at Tennessee. I think even though he only played 2 seasons for Tennessee, I think what he did there was pretty respectable. And to be completely honest with you, I'm not going to defend his college stats too much. I thought we were going on to say, hey, here's what they do even to this day. So if we're talking NFL, I mean, this guy, what a monster. But even his college stats, I mean, they were pretty good. He was in the class of 2013. I think he was somewhere around like 60, 70 in that recruiting cycle. But at Tennessee, he had 210 touches out of the backfield for 1,300 yards combined, 16 rushing touchdowns, 700 yards receiving on 74 catches, 7 receiving touchdowns. And we see where he's taken that, into the NFL. He's, besides Christian McCaffrey, I'd have to list him as one of the top receiving backs in the league. But I mean, from scrimmage, I mean, he has nearly 2,000 yards. He averages 7 yards every single play, every single time he touches the ball. And he had 23 total touchdowns. This is just over 2 seasons. I'm starting to realize now it's a pretty bad look that I have him on this list, but I couldn't leave him off.
Yeah, bad look, Brandon. I'm going to make you look real bad when I give my number 5 player. I have Joey Bosa. Ohio.
Okay.
Brandon said, yep. Ohio State defensive end, originally the number 37 overall recruit in the country. And Bosa lived up to all the hype and more at his time at Ohio State. He was the 2014 Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, a 2-time consensus All-American. He is top 10 in all-time sacks in Big Ten history, top 5 in career tackles for loss in Big Ten history, and he may have been ranked outside the top 30, but for me, there's no question that Joey Bosa belongs much higher in this re-rank, and he deserves a top 5 ranking here.
Yeah, I mean, he's on my list too. He's a little bit higher, not to brag, but yeah, I mean, he definitely deserves to be on this list.
And so since we're snaking it, guys, at number 4, I have Jalen Smith, Notre Dame linebacker. He was originally the number 2 overall recruit. He fell a little bit, but let me say this. He made our all-decade team here on the Bluebloods, and even though he dropped 2 spots, there's no reason to scoff at what this guy did. He was arguably one of the most dominant linebackers of the decade. He was a consensus All-American in 2015. He was a Buckus Award winner. He had over 100 tackles in 2 straight seasons and over 50 in his freshman season where he only played half the year. Over 20 tackles for loss in his career. And he may not be the number 2 player in this class anymore, but for me, he's a top 5 player in this class. And if it wasn't for a tragic injury, he might have went top 5 in the draft as well. But as you remember, he tore his ACL in the Fiesta Bowl in his last ever college game.
Right. He did. It's tough.
It's a bad look.
Yeah, Jalen Smith, very dominant player. Like I said, I thought we were going with what they've done to today. So next time I know what we're doing. But for my number 4 player to continue, I've got Jalen Ramsey. Ever heard of him? Jalen Ramsey, obviously, defensive back, cornerback at Florida State. He played for 3 seasons. He played his freshman, sophomore, junior season. Went to the draft after that. But throughout his career, I mean, as a cornerback, he had 5 sacks. He had 15 and a half tackles for loss, 181 total tackles. I mean, and let's highlight his sophomore year real quick, because I think that's really what made him. Over his sophomore season, he had 48 solo tackles, 32 assists on tackles, 80 total tackles is what that makes up for. 10 tackles for loss just in that 1 year. I just said he had that 15 and a half, but 10 in that 1 year. 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, and he had 30 return yards in those interceptions. 12 passes defended. That's nothing to scoff at either. He was a consistent All-American in 2015. He had, he holds the record for most forced fumbles in the ACC in 2014. Just an overall incredible athlete. I think what he's done in the NFL has even highlighted that more. Like I said, that's kind of what I thought we were doing here. But it's not, and I'm actually going to stick by this one. I think this is a good pick even for college. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on to my number 3 pick, which Zach already highlighted. Joey Bosa. Joey Bosa, fantastic player. Zach's already talked about him. I'm not going to run through it again. But yeah, he's on my list as well. I had him a lot higher than Zach. I guess I like him more.
I mean, it's tough, and there's 5 good players here. And for my number 3, this is going to be so controversial. I have Derrick Henry.
Wow. Okay.
Alabama running back. He was originally the number 12 overall recruit. And listen, I know it's controversial because he's the only Heisman winner on this list. But I feel like there's 2 other players that were more consistent through their career and had a better overall career than Henry's one explosive year. I know there's some who may not agree with this, but just wait till my next 2 picks to hear me out here. And really and truly, do I really need to justify why I have Henry in the top 3? I mean, he was a Heisman winner. He had 42 total rushing touchdowns. That's 10th in SEC history. Over 3,500 rushing yards in his career. That's top 20 in SEC history. And just in his junior year, man, he rushed for over 2,200 yards. Henry was one of the most dominant running backs of his time. And I think he's going to go down as the best running back in Alabama football history.
Okay. I mean, I definitely I have to agree with you there. I mean, he's not only a power back, I think he's also just a speed back. He's on my list as well, spoiler alert. So, yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you.
I think it's a good pick, but so yeah, for number 2, listen, this is now that I'm thinking about it, it's going to come off really bad. I have Ezekiel Elliott, Ohio State running back.
I don't like this, period.
He was originally the number 6, the 69th overall recruit. And nice. Hear me out. Elliott is above a Heisman winning running back, but Elliott had a better overall college career than Derrick Henry did. He had more rushing yards, more touchdowns, more 1,000-yard seasons, and he was just as decorated. The only thing Henry had that Elliott didn't is the Heisman. Elliott was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year. He was top 5 in rushing yards in back-to-back seasons for the entire country. He was top 10 in yards per rush in Big Ten history, and he's top 15 in Big Ten history in touchdowns. He was one of the most consistent and dominant running backs in this class and was just missing one piece, which was that Heisman. But he got his revenge on Alabama by beating them in the playoffs to lead that team to a national championship. And I think Ezekiel Elliott is the number 2 player in this class on this re-rank.
Well, Zach's doing my work for me because my number 2 player was Derrick Henry and my number 1 player is Ezekiel Elliott. I feel like I'm missing somebody, which makes me – is it Mitchell Trubisky? Am I missing Mitchell Trubisky here?
No, Mitchell Trubisky is not on my list.
Okay, well, Zach, go ahead and hit us with your number 1, I guess. I don't feel like I don't have to, like, sing their praises again, so –
I have Jalen Ramsey from Florida State.
Oh, well, he was number 4 on my list, so I didn't miss anybody. That's good. That makes
you didn't miss anyone. Brandon, he was the number 16 overall recruit in the class. And listen, guys, Ramsey is probably, even as an Auburn fan, one of my favorite college players of all time. He had everything, guys. He had the speed, the size, the physicality, and the playmaking ability. He was a 3-year starter at Florida State at DB. And his whole career, he was the best defensive back on the field at all times. Like, I'm not going to go back through his stats, but for me, his stats are deflated because his last 2 seasons, quarterbacks would just not throw at him. Ramsey was that corner, kind of like Darrelle Revis was in the NFL, that just shut down that half of the field. He was just the perfect shutdown corner, and I really think, and he was the defensive back pick for our all-decade team. He is probably the best DB of the decade, probably since 2000 or more, and he locked down the number one spot for me here.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had him on my list. I had him a little bit lower. I feel like there's some kind of like bond between you and Jalen Ramsey, like that I just haven't heard about.
I always liked him, man. And when he came out for the draft, he was my top prospect in that draft too. I really, really like Jalen Ramsey. I think he was overlooked a lot just because he played at Florida State when maybe they weren't at their peak. But
yeah,
I feel like he was really, really underrated because a lot of average football fans think that just because a DB doesn't get a lot of stats, it means they suck. But it really means the best DBs aren't going to have gaudy stats because they're not going to get thrown at. If the wide receiver's not open, why is the quarterback going to throw at them?
Fair enough. I mean, that's and the crazy thing is that, you talked about his sophomore season, even, the quarterbacks wouldn't throw to his side of the field, and he still had those stat lines. I mean, he still had 12 passes defended that season.
Exactly. That's what Jalen Ramsey is that guy. And if you don't believe me, just go watch his highlight tapes from Florida State. If you missed him, for me, he's probably the greatest college defensive back I've ever watched. And
wow,
that's just how I feel. That's just how I feel. And guys, we're going to end that there. We're going to come back not next episode, guys. We'll make the announcement at the end of the show, but our next full episode, we're going to go back to the 2014 class. But for right now, guys, we're going to move on. Last segment of the day. And as we usually do, we always end the show with an exclusive recruiting update. Check out our most recent episodes to catch up on updates from all around the country. But today, we head down to Waco, Texas, like I said, to analyze the Baylor Bears 2021 class. And they're trying to improve from a number 59 class last season. And Dave Aranda is trying to find that elite talent that he brought to LSU to bring to Waco. This class is headlined with 5 top 500 recruits. And the Bears still have multiple spots in the class open, so Aranda is not done. Brandon, what's your take on this class, and what do you think of Aranda's job so far?
It's a definite improvement from the past season. I'll say that. Right now they're sitting at 2 in the Big 12. Obviously they have 15 hard commits, so that's a pretty easy thing to do. And they're up to 21 nationally. And Zach, that's up from number 59 in 2020. So yeah, I think right now it looks very good. Like you said, they have 5 top 500 recruits. So they have every single one of their commits right now is a 3-star player. I'm not mad at that, especially for Baylor. Baylor's not really a program that's going to have the 5-star commits all the time. Obviously, they'll get their fair share every now and then. I mean, let's see. I mean, let's run through it real quick. I can't think of a 5-star they've had. I know that Jared Stidham committed there originally, right, Zach?
Yeah, he was a 4-star, I believe, initially. So it's up there. I mean, they've had some really good recruits. I mean, let's not get it twisted. I mean, but I think that the perception of Baylor has been a little bit different because Oklahoma and Texas really steal a lot of the big talent away from that area.
They do, and at the end of the day, it's still Baylor, and it's still a program that's recovering from what happened during the Art Briles era. But I mean, at the same time, this looks like a really good bounce back at the moment, right? I mean, they've got a 3-star running back who, out of Texas, Jordan Jenkins, who's their top recruit right now. Very good player. I mean, go watch his highlight films. He's a true athlete. I think he can do big things at Baylor. They've got Kyron Drones, who's a dual threat quarterback, another athlete, heading into this Baylor system. One thing that I was still on the fence about is the lack, or not really lack, but it seems like a lack of defensive recruiting to me. I mean, they have 6 defensive commits right now, out of their 15 total commits. Or I'm sorry, they have 7. So I mean, it's close to half. But you'd think that Dave Aranda is such a good defensive mind. You'd think he'd pull in more defensive talent, and it's not only that, but it's the fact that the defensive players are near the bottom of their list. Um, when it comes to recruiting, it kind of seems like the bottom half of their recruits are the defensive players. They have a lot of offensive players. I'd like to see where this kind of turns around as time continues, as the next 10 recruits roll in to Baylor. And actually, I'm gonna stop for now, Zach. I'm gonna let you continue on, and I'll give you my geographic breakdown after Zach's done.
That was my main breakdown of the class, is that the whole class is pretty much Texas. I mean, it's 12 of the 15.
Yeah, 12 of the 15. The others are from the Southwest as well, except for Missouri. I mean, they have one recruit from Missouri just out of nowhere. But other than that, I mean, all their recruits are from the Southwest. I mean, mostly Texas.
Yeah, and you're going to find more about this at the end of the show when we make the announcement. We talk about this class a little bit next week, but Aranda is using his location to his advantage, and I think he's going to make some moves in Louisiana coming up. When the visits can start happening, Aranda's going to dip his hand in connections from the South. Get ready, Georgia, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, all these places Aranda can recruit. So watch out. And then he's already going to have Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, just because of where he is. So I think Aranda's doing the best job he can in a situation where he can't get recruits to campus and make relationships with this new staff they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can see it. I don't know that he's going to be stealing, he might steal recruits away. And I know you didn't say this, but I don't really see him stealing big name recruits away from these SEC these SEC teams.
Those 4 stars might be coming. I'm just telling you. Maybe not the 5 stars, but there might be some 4 stars he secretly gets. But I want to go on to look at some of these recruits. My favorite recruit in this class, my favorite top recruit, is Kyron Drones. And he's the 441st overall recruit. He's the number 15 dual threat quarterback. And his pro comparison or college comparison is Jamie Newman, former Wake Forest quarterback, now at Georgia. He has similar size as Newman, about 6'2", 195, and they have very similar playing styles. The only problem I see with Drones is that he doesn't have elite speed. But he has enough speed and quickness to move around the pocket. But the biggest thing for Drones is that his size allows him to break just easy arm tackles and avoid injury due to big hits, because he can bring the hits to the linebackers. He has great ball velocity, and I think he has the arm strength to be a threat and press that defense at all levels of the field. And evident in his stats last season, where he threw for over 3,400 yards and 46 touchdowns, and he still had 18 rushing touchdowns and over 800 yards rushing. So for me, Drones is a developmental quarterback, but watch out when he gets to his sophomore, junior year. I think he could be a serious threat in the Big 12.
Yeah, he definitely could be. And I mentioned him earlier. He kind of stuck out to me as well. The player that I'm going to talk about real quick, though, is going to be the anomaly of what I talked about earlier. I'm going to have to go with Tevin Williams. He's a cornerback out of Stillwater, Oklahoma. And like I said earlier, it kind of seems like, it seems like the defensive players are toward the bottom of this recruiting list here in Baylor. Tevin's not. Tevin's the number 3 player for Baylor right now. He's what is he? He's the number 7 player out of Oklahoma. No, not 7. He's the number 7 player out of Oklahoma. That's right. He's the 31st best cornerback in the country, and I think that's a big takeaway from this draft class. And I think that is Dave Aranda's defensive mind going to work, and his recruiting skills just truly going to work. I mean, to go into Stillwater and take this recruit, that's something that's very impressive. So yeah, I mean, I think that speaks volumes about Dave Aranda's recruiting. about Baylor's prevalence in the Big 12 today. They're bouncing back, like I said. Um, one other thing that I do want to mention real quick before we end this segment um, is that Baylor has 15 hard commits right now. Zach, do you know how many commits they had the last recruiting cycle, like total?
What's that?
They had 17.
Aranda's doing work. They have a lot of scholarships available, man. They really do, and that's why I think that Baylor's going to be a threat for some of these players that might be borderline commits for bigger programs who wait out for 5 stars. So why not go ahead and take a spot that you have at Baylor and risk the chance that LSU or Ole Miss or Mississippi State doesn't have a scholarship for you?
Absolutely, and that's what I mean. It makes a lot of sense. Like I said, they had 17 commits out of high school. They had 2 transfers. So 19 total. Right now they're sitting at 15. They've got a whole nother year. Yeah, I mean, to me, things are trending upward. It's very obvious right now.
Yeah, it is. And, so I always give you guys 2 underrated prospects. My first one is Elijah Bean. He is the 502nd overall recruit and the number 84 wide receiver, and he's out of Humble, Texas. For me, this kid has it all, man. He's a long, lanky, rangy receiver with elite deep ball ability. Brandon, he's 6'5", 185, and is a track star with an 11 second 100-yard meter speed.
Yeah, that's
100-meter speed.
I like that.
And his brother played in the NFL for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think he has all the physical tools to be a multi-year starter, but he does have a few areas that he can improve on. And the first one is his hands and fluidity. He sometimes lets the ball, he doesn't catch the ball away from his body. He's not very fluid in his hip movement and his release. He gets jammed up at the line a lot, but I think if he puts on a little bit of weight, that could be improved on. And Brandon, what else is spring practice and redshirt years all about? It's improving little things like that make you a better wide receiver. And I expect Bean to develop and become a leading receiver in the Big 12. And guys, quote me on this, look for his name to be said in the NFL draft one day, because Elijah Bean is overlooked, and I think he easily could be the next Denzel Mims for Baylor.
Okay, I like the take.
And for my last prospect, guys, before we wrap this up, is Cisco Castos out of Weatherford, Texas. He's the number 517 overall player, the 36th ranked safety. And this kid, man, Brandon, I don't know if you've watched this kid's huddle film or not. After the show, go and watch it. The first play will back me up on this. He plays physical, hard-nosed football from the safety spot and will knock your head off every single play if he can. He's 6'2", 195, and his frame is really big, and he easily could add 10 to 15 pounds of muscle and be a serious problem in the Big 12, which really isn't known for their big physical DBs. And I think this player is coming to Baylor because of Dave Aranda, and he'll project as a hybrid type safety, and he really excels in tackling and run support, and he can play the middle of the field really well because he has a good hip movement and great acceleration. The only things I need to see are his ball skills and playmaking ability improve, but those can be developed at Baylor under Aranda. He's a 2-sport athlete, football and track, which speaks to his athleticism and speed, and I really think everyone should look out for Castos in Waco, Texas in the coming years, and I think he could be a 3-4 year starter and be in the NFL draft one day, even though he's not even a top 500 recruit right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Zach, good Lord, I just saw that hit. Okay. Yeah, very physical.
Yeah, there's like 15 more of them in there too, man. He unloads on kids in that tape.
And he's a defender too, man. He plays the field very well. I love his size. I mean, at 6'2", 195, look, like you said, easily could add another 10, 15 pounds of muscle over his college career. And at that point, who's to say he couldn't play down at linebacker, right? Like an outside linebacker. So I think he's going to be a fantastic, probably strong safety if I had to guess. Could be a free safety. I think he plays both. But yeah, I like that pick as well.
Yeah, but guys, that is going to wrap up the show. Another full episode today. So a few announcements for you guys. Stick around for at least the beginning of this. I want to give a shout out to my boy Brandon getting married this week. So we're going to take a little hiatus from the podcast, guys. But guess what? We put in some work. That does not mean we're leaving you guys. We have 2 amazing interviews set up for you guys. We held on to them. We're going to release one on Thursday this week and one next Monday. The first episode is the great Bob Kessling out of Tennessee, play-by-play guy for the Tennessee Volunteers. Big shout out to Bob for coming on. Cannot wait for you guys to hear that interview. And the second is John Morris. I kind of highlighted this earlier. He is the Baylor play-by-play. So we get into all things Baylor football with him. So look out for those 2 interviews coming up. If you know anyone who are fans of either of those teams, let them know to come check us out. Let them come, tell them to come check us out anyway, even if you're not a Baylor or Tennessee fan. But guys, social media at @_Bluebloods is our Instagram handle. At @__ Bluebloods is our Twitter handle. At the Bluebloods Pod is our Facebook. The Bluebloods Pod, the Bluebloods CFB Podcast is our YouTube. You can find the podcast literally anywhere you listen to podcasts, guys. We really love all you guys who listen to us twice a week. You don't know how much that means to us. And guys, keep subscribing, keep listening, rate the podcast, all that good stuff. But guys, until next Thursday, we will be back with you guys. But enjoy the interviews, guys. We'll see y'all soon. But for right now, we out.